Alright, so in this tutorial we're going to be looking at tables. Well, I've already done a video about tables, but I did get a request to do sorting and pagination, and oh boy. So I was like, okay, let's go through the documentation and look at it, and let's do something that makes a little bit of sense. And maybe it's just saying something about me as a developer, but looking through that documentation that Material UI provides, I was like, huh, this is kind of complicated. What do we need? What do we not need? Because usually that's how I go through tutorials, look at documentation, is I try to rip out as much gunk as I can and just keep it very small and atomic. Well, I've gone through that process. It's not the exact same thing you're going to see in their example, but you can sort and there is pagination. So without further ado, I actually have another Visual Studio Code opened up of everything that I've gone through. So let's see if I can recreate this step by step. So the first thing I'm going to do is, because I'm going to need more than one file, I'm going to need a table header. So we'll just call this the table head. And then, actually, I don't want to rename that. Make a new file. And I think, just so I'm looking identically at my other Visual Studio application open up here. I know it's table head, table header. You're just gonna have to walk with me on this one. There we go. That works out fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the imports I need on over. Everything else I'm going to type by hand, because I feel if there's copying and you're following along, that imports are fine because I could just keep them up there and you could type them in or pause the video. But the actual code and logic stuff, that would be robbing you. So let's go ahead and first make the head here. And so to avoid problems, because these are wrapped in divs and whatnot, we could do something like this. But instead what we're just going to do, because this is going to go inside of like a table, I think a container and an actual table like parent element here, you have to keep in mind we don't want, it's going to complain if like divs are the child of other elements when everything renders. So let's just keep it simple with the table head here. And if you're thinking, you know, geez, you're separating into multiple files, I think for something this big, it makes sense too. Maybe that's just me, but let's move this on down, get rid of this. We're saving this here. And then let's make a table row. Okie dokie. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a table cell. Seems pretty straightforward enough. And so then this is where things get a little interesting. So we have the table cell, but then we start to run into this other label or component, whatever you want to call it, we have called table sort label. And so we're going to come down into here and we're going to give it name. Okay, cool, awesome stuff. So let's just save this here. It'll indent everything in. And for table cell, what I'm just going to do here is what I found most minimally. Is we're going to give that, the key is the name. Now you may be able to delete that and make this still work. Like I said, I was just chopping stuff out until I got the smallest code possible to work, because we could always make it more complicated. But let's go ahead, and I'm going to move this later because I'm actually going to import table header into another table component here. But let's just check this out here. come down into here. And so we have this right here. And we see when we hover over it, it has the arrow. And that is because that's the table sort, I do believe, the built-in icon here. So when we click it, nothing happens. Something will happen eventually. But that is how it's going to look when we hover on over it. So let's come in here and let's make another cell. Because rather than do this in like a loop, I feel that this is much easier to do if we just hard code a very small example. So we have name, we have age, all right, awesome stuff. But we click on this, not much is going on. Boo-hoo, that sucks. Are we lost forever? And the answer is no. So let's space some of this stuff out here. And I know it's kind of rough when you have repeated code here, but let's come into the table sort label here, and I kind of want to show you all some stuff. So one of the values that we have in here is active. So we could come in here, we could say, I believe, true. And so active means that it's the one that's being focused on, that it's the thing being sorted. It's the one that's, actually doing the bidding of whatever the end user may be. So since the table cell, the key is name here, if we wanted to do something like, and this sounds really stupid, but just follow me here. And it'll say right here, yeah, comparing to itself is potentially pointless. We get that, but we're going to leave it like this because I'm going to show you how I thought through this process. So we have that here. We have name equals name. Let's copy and paste and just move that same logic down here. And for this one is going to be age. All right, awesome. These two are both active. They won't be, but right now we'll just make them both active. So the next thing we want to do is direction. So there's not much going on we could do with this right here. We could have ascending or descending. So that means, do they increase or decrease as the column goes up or down? So this here, we're going to, much like the active, we're going to be toggling later depending on what other values change in the state. We're going to want to change the direction of this. But for right now, just for a visual cue, let's just keep it the same. Maybe we'll say descending on this one just so you see them visually like that. So the next thing we're going to need to do, and I'm going to comment this out for a moment, is we're going to have an on-click, because this is what's going to get triggered and update another component when these get clicked. Because eventually, when we do something like this, let me come in here and just, when we click this, we want to go from ascending to descending. So we want to be able to flip the arrow, and it does animate, it does flip up and flip down. We do want to do that. And so by clicking this on click, that's what fires this all off here. So this is where it starts to, you kind of have to be like really follow along here, because this is going to jump into another file pretty quickly. So the name of this is going to be create sort handler. And we're just going to hard code. Crap, I can't type. I need a better setup for my desk. We're going to come in here and copy the same thing. Now this is where loops take care of this, right? We could come in and if we're looping through, we could say, object.name here, and we could put, in this onClick, we could load that in through a loop too, and that's fine. But I don't feel that that's going to necessarily help out a ton when you're trying to figure out, okay, where's the array at? What does it look like? Hard-coded values for this stuff are much better. So we got all this going on. So let's actually, let me look at my example here. Let me go ahead and just prime this for props, because we are going to have to bring stuff in. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and just comment this out. And so far, we're like pretty much, we're insanely close with the header. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to make another folder. We're going to name this table content. And this is where like the meat and potatoes of this whole table madness is going to go on here. So let me go into there and copy and paste from my other project what we need for imports. And this guy up here. Okay, cool. So then instead of table header, let's just do we'll do table content. There we go. Finally updated there. So, like I said, this is where a lot of the good stuff is going to be happening. So with this, let's just come down here. Let me scoot my other project on over. And let's get rolling. So we're going to come first and make the table container. This is the thing that's going to wrap around the entire table, as you could probably figure out. And then we have table. All right, this is pretty easy. And what else do we have here? Okay, so there's our table. That's not what I wanted. Table header. Hey, so that's kind of cool. So this isn't the table head, because that's an actual like component there, obviously, from table head. And don't worry, I will show these side by side eventually. So let me delete this, because, or not delete this, but X out of it, because we're just bringing in content, and we're going to keep it like this for the rest of the tutorial. So we got this going on right here. Let's go back into the content here. And so we have the table header, and we are going to inject props into it. We can't avoid it. We have to do it. So let's go ahead and think about this right here, because this is where it gets to the point of you kind of have to know what you're doing in advance. There's not necessarily one definite logical step I think you need to do next. So I'm going to try and sort that out here. So what we're going to need 100% is a loop. We have to loop through this. I thought about hard coding it. Maybe there's a possible way. Loops are going to be the only way, so we're going to need an array of some kind. So let's go first make an array. So I'm going to make it outside of our component here. We're going to name this row information. Actually wrong. There we go. Make a guy named Bob Johnson. His age is 69. If you comment nice down below, I will like your comment. Then we're going to have Jenny Johnson. and we're only gonna have 2 rows in this table. I do not want to do an information overload and just show out everywhere with information. And she'll be 25. They met online, and they're still together today. So we have Bob Johnson and Jenny Johnson. All right, cool. Awesome stuff here. So, okay, what's next? So what we're gonna want to do then is have a way to update, change the ascending, the name, and how many rows are going on in the page. So we kind of have to look a little bit far ahead now. So we already have this row information, but let's just think here of what we may need, because we have to set up state as we're going forward here. So let's just go ahead and make this, and I'll explain these tidbits as I go along. We have order direction, we have set order direction. And if you remember, we have ascending, we have descending. Okay, so we have direction here. That's a valid attribute of table sort label. So you could probably understand that this is going to be used to fill in that information. So right now we're setting it to ascending because that's the standard here. Let me move this over. Or at least the standard we're setting for our application. And let's come in here. We're going to have value to order by, then set value to order by. If you haven't figured out already, this is going to be a pretty long tutorial. Name. So as you can see over here, we have active. Okay, so maybe that's a tip off to us that the value is going to dictate which one is active currently. Right here on line 14 and right here on line 27. Okay, we're not going to use these just yet, but let's go ahead and make the rest of the state here now that I'm looking at it. So we're going to have page and then set page. And this is going to appear at the bottom of our rows, and that is, say we only have, we have 20 items, but we're only showing 10 per page. Well, we're going to want to be able to click next and show the next 10, right? And each one of those is a page, and they start at the value of 0. So this is going to be the rows per page. And since I only have 2 objects in this array, I'm only going to do 1. I'm going to keep it stupid simple there. So, okay, cool. We have this now. So since we have props, let me cover this up because we're not doing anything quite yet. We're not interacting with our web application here. We have props coming in. Okay, so we kind of want to take care of the active and then the direction right here. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go into our table header. Value to order by equals it maybe it's bad practice, no one at least has told me otherwise. When I pass a function or a value from one component to another, I like to keep them the same because I don't want to do a mental translation halfway through where I have a function or a value that has 2 names. So let's come into this line here and do order direction is order direction. So we're going to come up here into our header and we're going to catch those things. All right, so now that we have value to order by and order direction, let's go ahead and come down here. And so where we have active, we'll have if, we'll just copy that there. If the value to order by is name, then it's active. So right now it is name, but if through a function, which we're going to write in a moment, changes it to age, this will be false, and then this will be true down here. So really, this is why a loop makes sense for this, but we're going another direction here. So when we look also at the direction, we're not just going to want one solid value here. So, well, we are going to have one solid value, but we're going to have, oh, my bad. We're going to have a value to order by is name. We're going to give put in whatever the order direction is, otherwise it's just going to be ascending. And so we're just going to copy this right here, add that guy in. We're going to come in down here and we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to switch this out with age. Cool. So now that we have this here, whether it's active or not, actually I'm going to come in here. It shouldn't blow up. Sweet. So we see that this is inactive and that this is active because the arrow is present. So we solved that problem. You can't see much going on with the direction, but just trust me, it works. So the next thing we're going to want to do is, looking at my code on the screen that y'all can't see, is that we're going to want to now handle the sorting request. So we're going to come in here, and this is what we're going to end up passing. Oh, wrong side here. Come into content here, and this is what we're going to end up passing to our header for our on click. Okay, I guess my paste didn't work. Handle request sort. Just going to take an event and property. And so we're going to have our, what we're going to say whether or not it's ascending. So we're going to have, if our value to order by is the property that we're sending on in, and the order direction is ascending, whether that statement is true or false. Sorry for that. Let me scoot this on over here. This is going to determine whether or not it's ascending or descending. And a lot of this, you could probably just copy and paste yourself into your own tables, because some of this stuff is starting to get into what I've used the essential pieces. So set value to order by is going to be the property that's coming on in. So when we click on this, it's going to send the key in, which is going to be the name. So that property is going to be that name coming on in. Likewise, if we click on our table header and its age, that property is going to become the set or the value to order by. And so here, we're setting the order direction. So if it this is just helping out when we're selecting it, and we're just sorting things in their correct order. So this is how we're setting the order direction. And let's see here. So me looking at this, handle request sort, handle request sort. So now we're going to be bringing this into here. So we're not quite out of the woods yet, though. So we're sending up age, we're sending up name here. So we have the create sort handler. So let's go ahead and make that function actually and utilize the handle request sort. So we're going to create sort handler. I believe this is called a curried function. It's like a function that wraps itself in another function. So I don't know. Off the top of my head right now, I'm drawing a blank, but don't yell at me too much for this. Not everyone who makes every tutorial or makes any tutorial knows everything and has everything memorized. Sometimes a lot of what we do, and you figure this out, is knowing just enough, or sometimes being lucky with our guessing. So we're sending in the event and we're sending in the property. Okay, cool. So now this is going to lock and hook up into this guy. So whenever we click our header now, it's going to change this over here. So hopefully nothing blows up at this point. Sweet. So now that that's active, that's going to be, I believe, ascending, descending, ascending, descending, and that's what this toggling motion over here is doing. Likewise, this is selected ascending. Now it's descending. That's not too bad. So here comes the next part. So we're going to need a way to loop through all this crap here, and we're a lot farther than you think we are. So we have the table header set up. Awesome. But we're going to need a way to go through our very, very, very tiny array of 2 people here. So what we're going to need to do, and I say so a lot because I'm trying to, it's kind of my pause word. We're going to need a function that orders everything. And then we're going to have to add some array methods on there to handle things like pagination that we'll see the calculations for in a moment. So what we're going to want to do, and let me scoot my other solution on over here, is that we're going to come in here, and I'm just going to go ahead and type this out. And this is going to be called sorted row information. And it's going to take our array of row information, and this is where you just have to bite down and do it, or just copy it because it's common. But we're going to use a comparator, which is going to take the order direction and the value to order by. Cool. And then what I'm going to tell you we're going to get is we're going to get an array coming back. And you may be thinking I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but trust me, it'll work itself out. So we have our person, and we got to have our index here. we're going to have a table. Actually, that's not what I want to do. I want to use this. Because I just want to explicitly return it there. Okay, so we're going to have our table row. And I know that this is potentially volatile, what I'm doing here. But as you have more advanced data coming on in, you could set the index to something a bit more stable. So then we have our table cell. And I'm telling you, we are going to get a person.name object here. And let me copy and paste this. And now we're going to get a person.age. Okay, I could save this, but it's just going to blow up because I haven't written any of this stuff out yet. So let me just move this on over because we're going to need some space. And this is essentially the idea you're going to want to have. You're going to want to have some kind of function. You could write it and sort it somewhere else, but this is going to return a sorted array dependent upon the values that get changed when you click these guys up here, or gals, whatever you want to name it by. Now let's go ahead and, well, write those. So the first thing we're going to want to do is come up here. So we have row information. Let's come down. We have const sorted row information. We're going to take in a row array and our comparator. Now this next line I thought was like kind of wild. I was like, why do you need this? But this actually stabilizes the row information coming on in. So you're actually able to sort it. So I tried without this line of code and it blows up. So we have the element index. And this is just what we want to return. So this is how we're going to be able to sort the different values, you know, line by line here and compare them. So with our stabilized row array here, we're going to want to sort. And it's not as easy as just saying, hey, sort this. We're going to make a constant variable called order. And if you're thinking comparator is something built in, it is not. It's actually just a regular sorting pattern. I actually had to brush up on a little bit of my old computer science and be like, oh yeah, I remember that like 5 years ago when I went over it. So we got that here. We're going to write comparator in just a moment, but I'm going to write the rest of this code out. Return order. And that's just a simple one-liner right there. My bad. And this is what's going to write out or return us our now sorted array right here. Cool. So we're going to come above and we're actually going to write our comparator. Give me 1 second to look over this to make sure I'm doing this in the correct manner. So as we have down here, we have get comparator. So that's what we're actually going to write because that's what we're passing on in here. I just want to keep everything kind of like stable and have the same name going. That was my phone going off. Let me shut that off. But the volume was completely silent there. So we have a function, get comparator. We're going to have the order and then order by. I could equally use direction and value to order by, but I'm just keeping what I have on my other screen. So we're going to return order, which is this right here. So this is essentially our toggle that is going to dictate whether or not what we're returning is ascending or descending, depending upon how many times we click the top of the row. And so this is going to lead us to another function we have to write. And we're in the section now where if you're getting a little lost, because it took me a little bit, I had to do a little bit of refreshment here. I mean, call me an idiot, but you know, I'm just like a lot of you out here just trying to get by and produce okay code. This part you could copy. The part right here is kind of the mandatory necessary stuff with this sorting. Unless you have your own way of doing it, you can just go ahead and copy this part right here. So we have our function descending comparator, which is going to take, you know, the values as they come in, and then the order by here. So this is what this is essentially saying in this line here. Order by. Let me get down to this section. And that if, you know, the value of B, whether it's name or if it's age, if it's less than the other value it's being compared to, so say it's going to be, you know, 25, if 25 is less than the age of 69, return -1. And so this is kind of the pattern that we establish and repeat here. Likewise, if it's greater than, we're going to return 1. Otherwise, return 0. So we have this here, and let's save it. What do you know? It works. And so that is one way you could do the sorting on here. And yes, I know I only have 2 lines in here in the rows, but I think that was easy to show and describe. So we have that, but we still need pagination. Pagination is actually really neat when I got to it, because I was like, oh crap, they give you like a lot of stuff free out of the gate. So my pause word fires off right there. Let's go. We do not need the header anymore, I do believe. So let's bring this on over a little bit. And then right below our table container is our table pagination. And so it's going to have some attributes here that we need to fill in. One of them is rows per page options. Now it's kind of a mouthful, but I'm just going to have, since I only have 2 items, I'm only going to want to toggle 1 or 2 of them. Component, so I believe that's what's going to be wrapping this. we're going to have that set to div, just per the documentation there. So the count is actually going to be the row information dot length. So this is our like person array up here essentially. Rows per page is going to be equal to rows per page that we set above in our use state. Yeah, here we go, rows per page right here. So far it's set at 1. Page equals whatever our page is. I believe that's set to 0 because it starts at 0, so the first one. And so this is where things don't get tricky. We just have to fill in the functions. So then we need to handle change page, and then we need to do something on change rows per page. Because remember, it's not just enough to say, okay, the page changed, but then the amount of rows changed because they're intertwined. So let's go up here and let me adjust my other screen here. And let's just do handle change page. We're setting up an event because we do for nearly every function we write. So whenever handle change page, that's kind of awkward to say, rolling off the tongue there. What it does is sends up the new page, and that just tells us, hey, if we're on, page, 2, set that to page 2. That's all that's doing. Nothing any more complicated than that. Then we have const handle change rows per page. We're getting an event. I might as well be consistent and just wrap all these. Coming down here, and we're going to set rows per page. And if you use TypeScript or something, you wouldn't necessarily have to do this, but I need to get better at using it. Event target value, and then this here is the base. So this is going to be base 10 because we're going to be working in like 0 through 9. And then we're setting page because as we change the rows, if we're on a page and then we set rows to like 100 per page and we're on page like 10, there's going to be nothing on that page. So what we're going to want to do is every time we reset the rows, we're going to want it to default back to the beginning here. And so I don't think this is going to blow up. All right. So we have rows per page. We have 2. Actually, something did blow up. So let's see what we did here. So I look at my other code, and I see that handle change, handle, let me rewrite this so that matches up there. Ah, I know exactly what I did. So what happens is we're going to have to take our array and we're going to have to do some slicing, meaning that we're going to have to change how much is actually loading based upon the pages and then the rows and all the other stuff. So this is another thing that you could copy and paste as well. This is the only way it's going to work. And so this is the calculation that they do. And I hope that in future iterations they just kind of automate this for you. So something is still broken. So let's check this out down here. So my rows per page options is 1, 2, div, row information length, rows per page is rows per page. Page set there, handle change page. So that actually looks really good. And looking up in here, this looks good too, the slice, the map, because as we could see as we reset this, this comes on in. So let me look at my function up here. It's a typo. There we go. Stupid typos. And so now we're able to sort this here. See, even when I did this yesterday, I spent hours grueling over this. You still get it wrong when you reproduce it. But if I wanted to add more people in here, or I'm pulling it from somewhere else, I could equally do that. But this is sorting on a table and pagination. And I know this was a long video, but thanks for sticking with me. Like, share, subscribe, and I have more coming out soon. And thank you very much. Make requests and all that other stuff if you need some in the future.